Hello there, this is L24 World News and these are your headlines. Somali security forces rescued 106 people trapped inside a hotel that had been stormed by militants on Friday night. The daughter of Russian ideologist, who is one of the most prominent supporters of the President Vladimir Putin, died in a car bombing outside Moscow. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Ukrainian grain shipments offer hope for the war during his visit to Turkey on Saturday. The Association of Algerian Muslim Scholars decided to suspend its activity at the International Union of Muslim Scholars in the wake of Ahmed Raisuni's recent statements. Thousands of people gathered at the Zulu Royal Palace in South Africa on Saturday to witness the crowning of a new king in the country's richest and the most influential traditional monarchy. Good afternoon, I'm your host, Abdulrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. First in our topic on news, Al-Shabaab fighters have stormed a hotel in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, and engaged in hours-long exchange of fire, with the security forces leaving at least 20 deaths and more than a dozen people wounded. Islam Seed.
At least 20 people were killed and up to 40 others were injured in a day-long gunfight between Group Al-Shabaab gunmen and security forces after they attacked a hotel in the capital of Somalia. The identity of the victims, who are thought to be civilians, has not been confirmed yet. There were explosions early Saturday outside the hotel before the shooters stormed the building. On Saturday evening, gunfire could still be heard as Somali forces were still attempting to end the hotel siege.
Just minutes before the blasts, two of my friends, may God grant them paradise, named Hassan Yalahoy and Abdul Rashid, told me they would be leaving, but seconds later they were both killed by the blast. Both fled in confusion. They were all running towards the place where they thought they would be safe. The hotel began to fill with smoke and flames, and I immediately saw one of the hotel's bodyguards bleeding and another man wounded.
Such attack by Al-Shabaab group, who claimed responsibility for it, is the latest in a series of repeated efforts by the group to assault locations frequented by government officials. Since Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud became Somalia's new president in May, the hotel attack represents the city's first major terrorist incident. Al-Shabaab, which was forced to flee Mogadishu in 2011, is steadily making its way back from the rural areas where it fled, defying the presence of the African Union forces, as well as American drone attacks that are aimed at its fighters. In recent years, the group has captured even more territory by taking advantage of divisions within the Somali security forces, as well as disputes between the government seat in Mogadishu and regional states. It continues to pose the biggest threat to the nation's unstable political situation in the Horn of Africa.
The Association of Algerian Muslim Scholars decided to suspend its activity at the International Union of Muslim Scholars in the wake of Ahmed Raisuni's recent statements. And a recording of the third audio radio channel this Sunday, Abdulrazak Kassoum, president of the Association of Algerian Muslim Scholars, revealed that the association's activity at International Union of Muslim Scholars was suspended and that it was required to return to make an explicit and accurate apology from its president Ahmed Raisuni or resign from his office. Algeria continues to receive international solidarity and sympathy messages following the fire in a number of northeastern states of the country, which left 37 dead and 183 injured. Turkey, China, and Ethiopia expressed their solidarity after the loss of a large number of people's lives as a result of the forest fires. Algeria recorded broad Arab solidarity as heads of Arab countries such as Tunisia, Qatar, and Palestine as well expressed their sincere condolences for the victims. Daria Dugina, or Dogin, the daughter of ultra-nationalist Russian ideologists, was killed after a suspected explosive device detonated on the Toyota Land Cruiser she was traveling in, Russian state investigators said on Sunday. Russia's CHA state news agency quoted Andrei Krasnov, someone who knew Dugina, as saying the vehicle belonged to her father and that it was probably the intended target. Father and daughter had been attending a festival outside Moscow and Dugina had decided to switch cars at the last minute. Russian government newspaper Rossiya Gazeta reported. TV footage accompanying the statement showed investigators collecting debris and fragments from the spot where explosion happened. Alexander Dugina is a Russian philosopher, political analyst, and strategist. He was the chief editor at the pro-Kremlin Segra TV station. Dugina has helped to shape Vladimir Putin's interventionist foreign policies and had been called Putin's brain. He was involved in the Russian president's initiative for annexation of Crimea and considered the invasion of Ukraine as a certain. He has previously called for eradication of Ukrainian identity. Russia reported a new Ukrainian drone attack on headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet in the Crimean city of Sevastopol. The attack came a day after explosions erupted near military bases in Russian-held areas of Ukraine. There have been numerous explosions recorded in Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, including the ones in Sevastopol.
When we woke up in the morning, still in bed, we heard some bangs, like if the boys let off firecrackers in the park. And after, we heard a loud shot as if the main firecracker, not a shell, had exploded. And then it all came silent. We knew the drones were coming here from time to time, so we were ready for this.
This week, Kiev will celebrate Independence Day and mark healthier fighting with display of wrecked Russian tanks on its main streets. Ukraine's armed forces said the display of rusty Russian metal is a reminder to all dictators how their plans may be ruined by a free and courageous nation. Residents of the capital posed for photos and next to tanks even as the air raid sirens rang out. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited Istanbul to monitor the inspection of Ukrainian grain shipments. Mr. Guterres praised the remarkable and inspiring operation that has seen some 650,000 metric tons of grain and other food shipped from Ukraine. Nabil Khazini.
From Ukraine's port city of Odessa, where grain exports are flowing after a nearly 6-month blockade, to the Turkish coast near Istanbul, where all grain ships heading to and leaving Ukraine are subject to security inspection. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres visited the empty Invisible 2 ship before it sails to a Ukrainian port to collect its cargo of grain for export. This comes in a context where some countries are on the brink of a food crisis and others suffer from a rising inflation. A hope for peace, he says, this coordinated work between countries can bring to the two warring sides.
I felt that this is a work of enormous importance for humanity. Now, we always believe that hope is the last thing one can lose. And obviously, I have hope that the most important value for humanity, that is peace, will also come to this part of the world.
UN Secretary General said the United Nations is working with the United States and the European Union to overcome obstacles to Russian food and fertilizers reaching world markets. He said those countries that imposed sanctions on Russia had made clear that the measures did not apply to food and fertilizers, but added there had nevertheless been a chilling effect on exports.
I can tell you that we are working hard in order, in cooperation with the US and the EU, in order to be able to make those obstacles being removed and to allow for what we consider is extremely important for the people, especially in the developing countries.
Together, Russia and Ukraine account for a large share of global grain and fertilizer exports. In late July, a deal was brokered between Kiev and Moscow, opening the door for some 25 ships carrying over 6,000 tons of grain to leave to markets around the world.
In response to the escalating levels of hunger brought on by successive droughts and the imminent scene of famine, the UN World Food Programme has announced that it is expanding its assistance in the Horn of Africa. David Beasley, World Food Programme Executive Director, said that 9 million more people have experienced acute food insecurity since the beginning of the year, leaving 22 million people who are unable to afford enough food to eat in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia.
Climate change is impacting the entire world, and where I stand here in the Horn of Africa is absolutely no different. We're now looking at 20 million people marching to starvation here in the Horn of Africa. In fact, where I stand in Somalia, 7 million people, and that's twice as many as it was just 6 months ago. Why? Conflict, extremist groups, coupled with the driest season that we have seen in decades. 4 or 5 rainy seasons have just disappeared. And in the past 4 decades, the driest we've ever seen it in a long, long time. People are losing hope. But the World Food Program, if we get the support and the money we need, we can save lives and we can bring hope.
The Turkish health minister said that at least 16 people were killed and 29 others injured after a truck hurtled into street workers in Turkey. Social media footage showed a driver losing control of his truck and walkers trying to flee. In another incident in the country, a further 16 people, including emergency workers and journalists, died when a bus crashed into an earlier accident site. United Nations envoy Marcos Pozzo stated on Friday that those who govern Afghanistan need to improve governance and come up with a much-needed roadmap to tackle the country's humanitarian crisis. According to the UN Deputy Special Envoy for Afghanistan, promising signs that the Taliban and governments at lower levels across the country are trying to make positive changes, including promoting women's rights.
There are some signals, and for instance, when I talk to the Taliban leaders in Kabul, de facto ministers, de facto deputy prime ministers, when I go to the provinces, talk to provincial governors, district governors, I haven't met anybody who is not in favor of girls' education. So that shows to me that there is a majority in this country promoting girls' education, support women's rights, and also, supporting counterterrorism.
At least 20 people lost their lives and scores of houses were destroyed in a flash flood in Afghanistan's Logar province. Heavy rainfalls washed away several villages in Kuchi district. The flood had also destroyed hundreds of hectares of farmlands in the district and its neighborhood. In same story of flooding, Austria experienced severe flash floods over the weekend. Meteorologists reported record amounts of rainfall in the western region over the past 24 hours. Places most affected include the mountainous area of Vorarlberg. Wolfurt in the lower Rhine Valley is one of the communities of Vorarlberg that has been partially affected by the storms. Streams flooded the center of the village last night, followed by mudslides. Firefighters worked tirelessly to clear up impact roads and villages. Over 1,500 calls were made to clear up floods or mudslides in the area. Luckily, however, no injuries or casualties were reported in Vorarlberg. Tons of dead fish have been collected from the Oder River, which runs through Poland and Germany, after what has been described as an ecological disaster brought on by a hot and dry European summer, coupled with suspected pollution.
According to a German research institute, The most likely cause of the widespread fish deaths in the Oder River is a large overgrowth of toxic algae linked to industrial pollution. Authorities from Germany and Poland say they have been working flat out to determine the cause of tons of dead fish discovered in the river.
We are probably dealing with an influx of external substance that must have oxygenated this river.
Research is still needed on toxicity of the algae, and it's not clear yet whether humans and other animals could be also affected.
We suggested to the inhabitants and tourists who are staying by the Oder River or in the vicinity of the river not to enter the water, not to bathe in it.
Scientists say that such a large growth of algae requires elevated salinity levels that could be reached only through industrial pollution. If nothing was done to decrease salt levels, such toxic overgrowths could occur again during a hot, dry summer.
Japan is considering the deployment of more than 1,000 long-range cruise missiles, reports said Sunday, as tensions over Taiwan grow. The arms launched by ships or aircraft would be stationed mainly around the southern Nanslis Island and capable of reaching the coastal areas of North Korea and China. The head of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran said on Saturday that the West has always sought to prevent the country from turning into a producer of nuclear fuel to deprive it of power. Making the remarks in an address to a meeting with the Iranian education sector's directors, Mohammad Aslami added that the West has always sought to keep Iran an importer of nuclear fuel. Jesus Murillo Caram, a former general attorney of Mexico, appeared in court on Monday to answer allegations of torture, official wrongdoing, and forced disappearance in connection with the 2014 mass disappearance of 43 students. Murillo Caram's detention occurred the day after a government-led truth commission concluded that the army was at least partially to blame for the incident. In addition to Karma, the prosecution also issued arrest warrants for 14 gang members, 20 army soldiers and officers, 5 local authorities, 33 local police officers, and 11 state police. Colombia's new president said on Saturday he was suspending arrest warrants and extradition requests for members of the left-wing guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army, in an effort to restart peace talks to end nearly 60 years of war. The announcement is part of principal campaign promise by newly elected Gustavo Petro. Petro said he had authorized the reinstatement of protocols to allow the renegotiations to resume with the ILN. This also includes suspending arrest warrants for negotiators.
I have authorized the reinstatement of protocols, allowing negotiators to again reconnect with their organization, suspending arrest warrants for those negotiators, suspending extradition orders for those negotiators in order to start a dialogue with the so-called National Liberation Army.
Large number of Brazilians took to the streets of Sao Paulo in support of presidency candidate Lula da Silva. The country's top position take place on October 2nd, as Bolsonaro affirmed he would object election results if he loses the vote. Usama Ayadi.
Tens of thousands of supporters went out in Sao Paulo to cheer presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, in a rousing display of enthusiasm for his bid to return to lead in his country.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva defends a secular state. The state must not sponsor religion. All religions must be defended by the state. But I also have to say that the churches don't need a political party. The churches must take care of the faith.
Supporters chanted when he took the stage in a park in the outskirts of the sprawling metropolis in the first public event of his campaign to try to unseat incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro. Lula assured the crowd that there will be a peaceful transfer of power after the October 2nd elections, dismissing threats by Bolsonaro that he would not accept the results of the elections if he loses the vote.
Lula's coming back and will show this country that we can have our dignity back. We can have back what he overcame. We were the 11th largest economy in the world before the 2003 government. After we rose to the 6th, we have everything to succeed.
Bolsonaro has repeatedly threatened to reject the results of the elections, citing without any evidence the country's electronic voting system is vulnerable to manipulation and fraud.
We're not going to do anything with you. It's the people of Brazil who are sick of you. Because of so many lies, so much injustice and suffering, the people will remove him. Bolsonaro says, if I lost, I'm not going to pass the presidential sash. You're going to give it indeed, because it will be the people who are going to put it on us in Brasilia.
In the latest poll released by Datafolha, a respected national surveying firm, 47% say they intend to vote for Lula, against 32% for Bolsonaro. A 15% gap that gives Lula a small chance to win the presidency outright in the first round of voting, avoiding a runoff vote at the end of October.
After serving a sentence for scoring a failed ethnic nationalist revolt in 2005 in Peru, the Peruvian leader, Antauro Humala, was released from prison on Saturday, raising concerns about the likelihood that he could re-emerge as a powerful political figure. This latter, the brother of former President Ollanta Humala and the leader of the so-called ethno-Cacerist movement, which calls for marginalized indigenous Peruvians to grab power. Almost 2,000 workers at the UK's biggest container port will launch an 8-day strike Sunday over the pay dispute, the latest industrial action to hit the UK economy. This adds to the more than 50,000 workers from railway, tube and bus network who went on strike over pay and working conditions from last Thursday well into the weekend. Greece yesterday concluded 12 years of European Union fiscal surveillance that was imposed on return for bailouts after a crushing debt crisis. EU officials said that Athens had delivered on the bulk of its commitments, which include waves of pension cuts, spending constraints, tax increases, and bank controls. Greek economic development and policies had been monitored under the framework since 2018. The Montenegrin government fell in a no-confidence vote early Saturday that followed a rift over relations with the powerful Serbian Orthodox Church. Lawmakers voted 51 to ask the government of Prime Minister just week after he signed an agreement regulating the position of the Serbian Church in Montenegro.
Gospodine Abazoviću,
Mr. Abazovic, with your behavior, you removed the European perspective from citizens of Montenegro, and because of that, your mandate will be shortened today, and your mandate will be shortened because you deserved it to be shortened.
Thousands of traditionally dressed Zulu warriors and maidens descend upon a royal palace in Ngoma, South Africa, to celebrate the traditional coronation of a newly crowned Zulu king. Zara Furjani tackled the story in this report.
Around the small marble palace perched on the hills, the Zulu people crowned their new king, the most powerful traditional ruler in South Africa, despite a dispute over the throne which has lasted for more than a year. A colorful crowd of thousands of people gathered for the celebration in honor of Misuzulu Zulu, who succeeded his late father after 50 years of reign. The new king addressed large crowds for the first time after undergoing a traditional ritual to mark the beginning of his reign.
I promise the Zulu nation a blessed journey, a journey that has God, ancestors, and to be with you in darkness or danger.
The The Zulu kingdom was thrown into disarray following the death of Goodwill's Zwelithini, resulting in various succession battles and urgent court interdictions to halt the traditional coronation. Some members of the royal family disputed Mr. Zulu's right to become the next king.
I know that you are aware of the state of the royal family in recent times. I request that whatever you hear in the media and the comments being made by those disputing the throne, you hear them, but you should not listen to them.
The Zulu ethnic group is South Africa's largest, with more than 12 million people, mainly located in the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
That's all we have for now. Thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform as it is shown in the screen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.